Kamala Harris says she'll help ensure a peaceful transfer of power between the Biden administration and Donald Trump and his team. In a speech to supporters, a speech that no politician wants to give, she said while she conceded the election, she would not concede the fight that fueled the campaign. She said it was a fundamental principle of democracy that when one side lost, they accepted the result, referring to Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the results of 2020. Correspondents say the Harris campaign was depending on women voters to tip the election in their favor, but they weren't even able to match the number of women won by President Biden in 2020. Ms. Harris now becomes the second female presidential candidate to lose to Mr. Trump. From Washington, Arise international correspondent Adefemi Akinsoya reports.
300 electoral votes have brought Donald Trump another 4 years in office, a sweeping victory, and he says the work is far from over.
I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
His supporters say they are optimistic for the immediate changes for the better.
He's going to lower the prices and make it more affordable for people to have a living and put money in the bank. As far as the immigration, we don't know who's in this country. There's people that have been in this country, and I'm sure there's other people who have been in this country 10, 20, 15 years or whatever, that can't get their legal status because the system is so bogged down with people that have come across the border, and they give them everything.
A short distance away at Howard University, Kamala Harris took to the stage at her alma mater to deliver an impassioned concession speech.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation, the ideals that reflect America at our best. That is a fight I will never give up.
Despite her defiance, the deflation amongst the students on the campus is undeniable.
If I'm being quite frank, I don't feel hopeful. I feel pretty defeated, to say the least.
It was very unexpected. I didn't expect it at all. They didn't want to vote for her, so they voted for Trump, and I found it very disappointing.
I'm very heartbroken. I don't know how long I'll feel this way. I'll honestly probably feel this way for about 4 years, but who's to say?
I think that Vice President Harris has always been the epitome of what someone running for office should look like and what they should represent in our country. And I'm just so grateful that she chose the Mecca, Howard University, to convey this message.
Back on the grounds of the president's official residence, preparations are already underway for a new, albeit familiar name.
The road to the White House comes with twists and turns, but inevitably there's history on every corner. The next occupant will be Donald Trump. In a presidency he says will put America first for the second time. Adefemi Akinsoya, Arise News, Washington, D.C.
And we'll be returning to Adefemi, technical gremlins permitting, later on in this broadcast to get her latest assessment of the developments in America. But for another assessment of those developments, I'm joined now on the line from Washington by the U.S. military and current affairs analyst Doug Brooks, founder of the International Stability Operations Association. Great to see you again, Doug, and thanks very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us. A short while ago, President Biden delivered a short speech, short but quite a lot to take away from it. I don't know if you watched it. If you did, what did you take away from that speech?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, he looked really good. He looks happy and he looks like he's doing well and seems content with the way things are going, even though it wasn't the ideal result for him. He made two great points. He said, one, it's going to be a peaceful transfer of power. And this is something that he really wanted to emphasize to Trump because, of course, the last time Trump took over, it was very chaotic, and Trump has never actually conceded that he lost the 2020 election. The second point that Biden made that was very important is that he's going to instruct the administration, instruct all the offices that he controls to facilitate the handover to the next Trump administration. So that should smooth things forward. And he made the point that, you can't just love your country when you win. And so he's basically said, we're still going to support the United States. He's wished the Trump administration the best. And obviously that would be good for the United States. So it was a good speech. It was short, but he did a great job. I think he said what he needed to say.
Of course, turning to the man who won the ballot, Donald Trump, tell us about what might be sort of the next steps for the president-elect in the coming days. I mean, presumably he'll be looking to put together his administration and considering people for his cabinet and his staff for the White House.
Yeah, and that's going to be pretty interesting to see who he picks. So, interestingly, in his last administration, he used a lot of sort of mainstream Republicans for his administration, and gradually, one by one, they left in disgust or resigned, or he fired them. And so he's sort of run out of the mainstream Republicans, and he has a handful left that he can rely on for some of the more technical spots. So leading the Department of Defense and Department of State and so on. So that's going to be kind of complicated. Now, one person who's probably going to be in there is a guy named Tom Homan, who was the head of the Homeland Security, I think, in the last administration. And one of the policies that Trump has been pushing is to expel essentially 12 to 20 million people who are here as illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, or them undocumented immigrants and their documented families. So there are actually people here who are citizens because they were born here, who are parts of families that have undocumented immigrants, and Tom Homan saying they're going to expel the whole lot. The numbers are mind-boggling. So by one account, it would cost $88 billion to remove 1 million people from the country, and so that's kind of mind-blowing. Anyway, one of his other promises then is the whole tariff issue, and we'll see what happens there. The Republicans have won the Senate, and the Senate is probably will be controlled by real Trump supporters. There's a question if they only end up with about 52 out of 100 Republicans, then there's two moderates that may make it difficult for Trump to get his legislation through. But there's still some outstanding races, so we don't know how many seats the Republicans will actually have. On the House side, it does look like the Republicans are probably going to take the House as well, though that's not for sure yet. There's still a lot of races that are being counted. If the Democrats control the House, at least they'll be able to put some stoppers on the Trump policies. If the Democrats don't control the House, which seems likely, then there's going to be very little to prevent Trump from moving forward on all his policies, even the more radical ones, which could be interesting.
Indeed, but in terms of the cabinet posts, though, I mean, those are sort of Senate-confirmed positions. So those who are nominated have to go through the process of being confirmed by the U.S. Senate. But of course, the Republicans have regained control of the Senate. I imagine that would make it easier for Mr. Trump to get his nominations through.
Well, it'll be easier, and if they get 53 seats, as I said, then so they can sort of overrule the two moderate Republicans, that would be make it even easier and mean that he could get essentially more radical people into those positions. Not clear if he'll be able to pull that off, but we'll see. It's something, for the next months until his inauguration. We're going to be seeing people that get picked to go into these positions, and you'll see what kind of resistance there is. You'll also, I think, have an issue, sort of a long night of long knives, as I've said. It's a lot of people, MAGAs as we call them, the real core supporters for Trump, are going to be fighting for these positions. And they don't necessarily like each other very much, and they're going to be trying to get those plum positions. And we'll see what happens, but it should be a good time to pull out the popcorn and watch what happens.
Well, it certainly sounds like it. And but of course, we've seen a very divided America during this election campaign, and Mr. Trump in his victory speech talking about healing those divisions. I mean, do you see Mr. Trump putting his shoulder to the wheel and really working hard to try to heal a very divided country and to bring America together again?
He's never done that before. I don't really expect to see that, or maybe for about 5 minutes, and then he'll go back to Trump as normal. But I think it's important to remember that the Republicans won this election in a very big way. And Trump may even win the majority of the popular vote, which hasn't been done by a Republican in years, decades, actually. So if he's able to do that, I mean, the Democrats know they're defeated. They have to work on their own messaging and so on. But you have most of the country essentially is willing to see what Trump administration number two can do. A lot of questions out there, and the last one was pretty crazy in terms of, like, there's news every day because he was pushing the boundaries of what the president's allowed to do. Sometimes out of ignorance, sometimes out of malice. You just don't know. We'll probably see the same thing. I don't think anybody's expecting a calm administration this time either.
And what I don't know, I lost you for a minute there, although our audience could hear you very clearly, but I lost you for a minute. What about, I don't know if I don't want to make you repeat yourself, and I hope you haven't already talked about this, but what about climate change and the environment? What might be the implications of a Trump administration for things like global warming, oil production? Do you expect a big rollback of climate rules?
Oh, absolutely. And of course, one of his themes was drill, drill, drill. He wants to start drilling for more oil. He wants, I think today or yesterday, Biden just actually took some federal land and made it off limits to oil drilling, but that will certainly get reversed by Trump. The U.S. is basically, since Obama, has been energy independent, and he wants to become a big exporter, I guess, of energy. So that's probably the way we're going. I think what's interesting to note is the U.S. economy is the best performing economy in the industrialized world right now, largely because of the stewardship of Biden, which has surprised me. I think Biden is fairly left wing, but he's actually done a really good job with the economy. And this is being handed to Trump, whose entire campaign was based around the idea that the economy was failing. So we'll see what he does with it. But right now, we have incredible growth rates. We have a really low unemployment rate. We have great, excellent trade record. We'll see what happens. He's being handed a great economy on a platter. But his avowed policies are both going to be possibly disastrous for trade and may hurt the whole international trade system. And as you brought up, the whole climate change thing, he doesn't believe in it. He said that many times, and he was quite likely to roll back the legislation related to it. So not a good time to be interested in avoiding climate change. And this is, of course, in addition to the fact that we've had multiple hurricanes, large hurricanes, hit the United States coast this year, and most analysts believe that those are expanded because of the additional heat involved.
And let me just bring this to your attention, Doug, because we're hearing that Senator Marco Rubio is being considered as a possible Secretary of State. That means, of course, that he'll be the emissary of President Trump to all those countries around the world where there is fighting and wars and all the rest of it. I mean, what are your thoughts on him as a potential Secretary of State?
I had not heard that, but it's an interesting choice. Rubio has a real reputation as a chameleon, so he was an anti-Trump person back when he actually competed against Trump at the 2016 election, and he since completely changed his colors now, and he's a big Trump supporter. I don't know that he'd be the ideal person for Secretary of State, but I guess among the possible choices that Trump could pick, I don't think he's a terrible option. He's a senator from Florida, of course. He has Cuban roots, and he's fairly young, which is interesting. So he may have a bright career ahead of him as well. We'll see how he does. I think he would be confirmed as Secretary of State, but it's an interesting choice.
Okay, Doug, I want to thank you very much indeed. I mean, we really appreciate the time that you take to talk to us and to give us an insight into what is happening inside America. We have a global audience, and many of them not in America. Doug Brooks was talking to me there from Washington. He's a U.S. military and current affairs analyst and founder of the International Stability Operations Association.